Hello, my name is Lizzie. Welcome to my channel, and for today's movie, we are watching The Exorcist. Of course, this film had to make it to this list. Now, I don't recall if I specifically talked about this film in my unpopular opinions video. I know that I did talk about it in reacting to your guys' unpopular opinions. If you have not checked out either of those videos, there will be links, but this is a film that I wouldn't say I feel is overrated. I definitely understand the hype and appeal around this film. It's just the first and I think only time, I think I've only watched this movie once. It was just so hyped up that it kind of fell a little flat for me. I'd also been like watching a couple other horror films with a friend and her mom actually. And I mean, this was prior to me even getting into horror, and I just found it like not all that exciting. Like some TV on the burner. But I'm excited to give it a rewatch and see how I feel about it now that I've gotten a little bit more seasoned with my horror, and see if I have like a newfound appreciation for this film. It's just like I grew up hearing about how terrifying this film was. Even my dad said that like this film terrified him. He saw it in theaters. He had like a funny story that he was like, him and his friend were like driving back from the movie theater, and like a piece of paper or something like flew up and like scared the crap out of them and like almost caused them to crash. Like I remember telling me that once. So I don't know, there was like such this hype around it before I previously saw it that it was just like, oh, this is okay. You guys also know I'm not the biggest Possession fan, which I think played into that a lot, but I have found a more, I guess, newer appreciation the more Possession films that I've been watching, because I've watched, I mean, not very many on this list, but I have been watching a few. So yeah, I'm just excited to see if my opinion changes at all, and I will let you guys know.
Hello, Reagan. I'm a friend of your mother's. I'd like to help you.
You might loosen the straps, son.
I'm afraid you might hurt yourself, Reagan.
I'm not Reagan.
Okay, so wow, I'm actually pretty happy that I had to rewatch this one. Not gonna say that it like completely changed my mind about this film and I like instantly fell in love with it upon rewatch. Sorry if you can hear planes, we're just in the way of those. But I definitely enjoyed it more this time than I did the first time I watched it. I mean, granted, I was also younger. Like I said, just didn't have as much as horror watch experience. I definitely feel somewhat differently about this film. Like I said, I'm not like absolutely in love with this film. It's not suddenly an instant favorite, but I did like it more around this time. Now, granted, I will also say, if you plan on rewatching this film, I highly, highly suggest before you do that you actually listen to Nightmare on Film Street's episode about that. They are a horror movie podcast. If you don't listen to them, highly, highly suggest. Even if you're someone that's like not really into podcasts, I wasn't when I started listening to them, and I'm still getting caught up on episodes, but I did a couple weeks ago listen to their episode on the Exorcism. I'm not sure what other movie they paired it with. They basically pair two films with kind of similar themes. And unfortunately I don't recall which one they paired it with, but I really liked their take on this film. They kind of opened my eyes to some aspects about this film. One of the things that they talked about in their review, and one of those things was that they talked about the fact that the priest Damien, or Jimmy, whatever you refer to him as, really is kind of like the main character of this film. Obviously you have Reagan, who is the one that's possessed, and she's, you know, a big character of this film. We wouldn't have what's happening around her without what's happening to her, but he really does play like a very big part in this film, which I kind of like forgot about, because like I said, I've only seen it one time. It was a long time ago. And he really is like a main character of this film. You're watching this guy who has basically dedicated however many years to the church and his faith, and you watch him struggle with that, and him struggling with like the loss of his mom, which I like the aspect that he was already struggling with this faith prior to her death. It wasn't like her death sent him into this like spiral of like, why would God do this? Like, she was old, but he just has more of like a guilt with it. He feels kind of like responsible for having like left her alone, which isn't really his fault. But he like, you watch him struggle with this a lot, and you never really get a closure on that. I mean, it's definitely with the exorcism, like you can tell that the faith is kind of like coming back. And I like the fact that it felt like he was really drawn to what was going on with Reagan and really wanted to be involved with it, almost in a way of kind of trying to prove to himself that possession wasn't real, instead of trying to prove to himself that it was. And yeah, I just really liked that character as well, and I definitely agree with NoFS on that aspect. And also something that they did in this film that I really liked, that I don't feel like you see in much possession films, or films that involve priest or religion at all, is the fact that they are really a part of this community. The priests are, like, in the church and everything. Like, there's just this church in the neighborhood, and like there's, you know, the priests hang out with everybody. They are friends with everybody. They're really treated like normal people. Like, they're like the party scene, there's people drinking and the priests are just there like hanging out, being friends. There's not like, they're not treated like these like untouchable mystical things, people that just like sit in a church and spend all day praying to God and then like pop up for the exorcism scene, which is generally what happens, I feel like, in possession films or films that involve any sort of exorcism aspect. The priest characters just like pop up for a moment. They are really like heavily involved, and they're just like treated like people, and I thought that that was a very different thing to do, and I really like that, which, I mean, it makes sense because you are focusing so much on Damien, but he's not the only one. Like, there was multiple priests involved in this. Speaking of the super old dude, I feel bad for that guy. Like, he is the first half of this film just like out in a desert, and that's like another aspect, that is an aspect that I kind of had an issue with within this film, is that it really doesn't like make a whole lot of sense, I guess, unless, well, because I guess the church or whatever does send these priests out to like have other like careers. Like Damien, he's a psychiatrist, so I guess this guy is sent off to be like an archaeologist and try to like discover things, but I'm not really sure. Like, obviously he finds this like amulet thing, and that pops up again at the very end of the film as having been in Reagan's room, but I'm not really sure how all of that kind of fits together. Was it always there and that's what possessed her? Because you don't really know if it's like the Ouija board, or what. It's, the whole thing is kind of like a little bit foggy on that. They don't really like address exactly how she got possessed, which is kind of odd for a film that's called Exorcism that's supposed to be strongly about her. But like I said, she is a very big main piece of this, but she is not the sole attention of the film. So I guess like that kind of bothered me. Like that whole opening scene just kind of seemed like a little bit of a waste. Like maybe they had planned to go further with that scene, or more like in depth into detail about all of that, or they were just trying to give you background on this guy. I'm not really sure what the point of that was. This movie is over 2 hours long, so there are quite a few scenes. I wouldn't say there's like a lot of scenes I feel like could have been cut out. There's just like a lot of extra going on in this film. There's, you know, the scenes with like the doctors, which makes sense. Like, I'm not saying that those are necessarily scenes that needed to be cut out, but I feel like the film could have done okay without them. Though, granted, I don't know how much I would have enjoyed the film if those scenes were in it, because you really are, like, they do really tackle Chris and Reagan's, like, relationship and their closeness, and you see Chris just, like, breaking down, trying to help her daughter. She keeps, like, yelling at doctors and just telling them all they're wrong, which, of course, like, they are, but you're also kind of sitting there like, okay, Chris, like, at one point she says 88 doctors and all you're giving me is BS, and you're just kind of like, in an IRL situation, at that point you'd kind of be like, okay, maybe she's the problem, and she's, like, in denial, which is really how everybody treats her, which is horrible, and honestly, like, kind of a horrible aspect of the medical world in general, that people do sometimes, like, not so much to, like, the extent of, like, the whole possession exorcism, but sometimes, unfortunately, there are doctors that will kind of, I'm trying to think of the term, gloss over, I guess, patients, just based off of first impression judgments. It is a sad fact that that does happen, but obviously, like, I mean, Damien even talks about the fact that, like, they don't really do exorcisms anymore because they've learned about, like, mental illnesses, which is a lot of what exorcisms did treat. And I like that they included that information in this as well. Anyway, all in all, I actually did end up really enjoying this a lot more than I thought I would, and I did try to go into it with a clearer head. I kind of, you know, went into it thinking about all the things that they said on, like, the NoFX podcast, not sponsored at all. I just fucking love that podcast, and Kim and John are sweet, fantastic people as well. Also suggest highly to follow them on social media. Sorry, if you hear creaking, it's the couch sitting on it, but but yeah, so I tried to go into it with, like, a more clear head, not thinking so much about, like, how I felt after the initial time that I watched it, and really just, like, focusing on the film itself, and I'm glad I did. So if you have seen The Exorcist, which I'm sure most of you have, let me know your opinions on it in the comments below. If you did enjoy this, please do give it a big old thumbs up, and make sure that you hit the subscribe button for more horror-related content. And before I go, a quick shout out to my Patreons. Thank you guys so much for helping to contribute to the channel. If you want to know the perks to being a Patreon, links are in the description below, along with all of my other social media. And I will see you guys again tomorrow with another video. Bye!